Hello everyone, welcome to the Red Channel. Today's video topic is a very particular one, but it's something that was, or rather is very close to our hearts as an editorial team. That's also because every time we start a comparison, if we're talking about crossover or maxi enduro segments, there's always a comment saying, this one's missing, that one's missing. And every time we explain, look, it has a different front wheel. But at this point, since we're talking about crossover maxi enduros, we're interested in understanding, or at least trying to understand, which solution among 17, 19 or 21-inch wheels on bikes with long travel suspension is the best or most effective for riding on the road. For this reason, we've come to find a nice winding road, and each of us, Lorenzo, Marco and myself, has brought what he considers the best representative of a specific wheel diameter. I really like the 19-inch wheel. I never make a secret of it whenever I test bikes, and in my opinion, one of the best examples of this wheel size is the Ducati Multistrada V2. Light chassis, a wheel that's extremely well balanced in terms of suspension, semi-active suspension, quick to use in the corners but with great support. For me, it's definitely one of the best representatives of the 19-inch category.
I'm a road rider at heart. I grew up with 17-inch wheels, and for me, sportiness is one of the main factors when choosing a motorcycle. So, among the crossovers, I'd pick the KTM 890 SMT because, in my opinion, it's the one that best brings out the nimbleness and agility that a 17-inch front wheel can offer.
I chose the Tiger 900 Rally Pro because I've always been passionate about 21-inch wheels. I've always liked getting off the asphalt and being able to have some fun with a large diameter wheel. But in this context, in my opinion, the English Enduro manages to combine road riding in the best way with decent agility and the ability to handle itself well in any situation you might ride in.
Obviously, for all three bikes, we use the same Continental Trail Attack 3 tire, also because in this case, we wanted to eliminate a very important variable that would have been even more noticeable here. Some people ride with knobby tires, some with a half and half, and some with almost slicks. We brought everything to the same level, so the same compounds, of course with different tire diameters and sizes, but the basic characteristics of the tire are the same. I'll talk more about the tire later. Now let's start our test. Each of us will more or less explain why we chose our own bike, the other two will comment on it, and then we'll meet in the studio for the final big discussion. And why not? We'll probably even give some ratings. Let's go!
Yes, this time the bikes are here, but they're meant to highlight the choice of a very specific front wheel diameter. This video was born from the countless questions you always ask us under the comparison videos when we talk about this segment. Maxi Enduro crossover 17, 19, 21. Personal preferences easily take over, and gut decisions are just around the corner. A gut decision that we've tried to make as objective as possible, fully aware that in the end that fantastically imperfect machine that is the motorcycle never has absolute values but must fit the habits and preferences of the rider. After all, if that weren't the case, all bikes would be the same. And how boring would that be? That's why in this video we won't be talking about fuel consumption, riding position, aerodynamic protection, the engine or anything like that. Instead we'll be talking about sensations, corner entry, stability, everything that's characterized by the front wheel. In this case, the motorcycle comes second, but it's obvious that the choice of a front wheel also brings with it technical decisions that define the chassis. Even though, in the end, the question you always ask us is the same, but who gets to the top of the pass first?
For this comparison, we made a precise choice to eliminate a fundamental variable, that of the tires. And we always do this, as you know. All three bikes are fitted with Continental Trail Attack 3s, one of the few tires capable of offering all the sizes needed for this comparison. We chose this one because, as we well know, the tire is the first filter between the bike and the asphalt. Changing the tire means changing the behavior, and this always happens. So, if we had kept the stock tires, we wouldn't really be comparing 17, 19 and 21-inch wheels, but rather three different tire philosophies. But this way, no. Same compound, same structure, same idea of grip. The only thing that changes is the size and therefore the way the bike works. And here comes the key point. Tire dimensions aren't just numbers, they're geometry, behavior, character. On the KTM, we have a 120/70-17 at the front and a 180/55-17 at the rear. Wide footprint, low sidewall, sportier profile. Result, quick turn-in, lots of support when leaning, immediate reactions. The Ducati already changes things up, 120/70-19 at the front, 170/60-17 at the rear. The wheel gets bigger, the profile gets taller, the bike becomes more progressive in its movements, less twitchy, more rounded. And then there's Triumph, 90/90-21 at the front, 150/70-17 at the rear. Narrow section, tall sidewall, a lot of vertical development, and everything changes again. Because while it's true that a wider tire increases the contact patch and support when leaning, it's also true that it requires more effort to tip the bike in. A narrower tire, on the other hand, goes into corners with less effort, but obviously has less sidewall on the ground. And then there's the diameter. The larger the front wheel, the greater the gyroscopic effect. In other words, greater stability but less agility when changing direction, and even less so as speed increases. That's why this comparison only makes sense this way. Same tire, 3 different sizes, 3 different riding philosophies. We're not comparing 3 bikes. We're trying to understand how much a wheel and its tire can change everything. With the Continental Trail Attack 3, we were truly surprised today by how quickly these tires can reach operating temperature even at very high speeds. Really just a very short warm-up time. The characteristics are the ones we know well. Continental uses a single compound, so there are no dual compounds, but they use a different vulcanization process on the shoulder to achieve multi-grip technology. This means more grip on the shoulder and less grip in the central area to increase mileage. I have to say that these tires have really surprised us in some cases, especially the one with the 21-inch wheel, which really showed us how far you can go today with a bike that seems designed for something else and not necessarily for riding on the road. The Continental Trail Attack 3 is the tire featured in this comparison.
More than that of touring crossovers, the KTM 890 SMT speaks the language of the most extreme street supermotos, characterized by agility, quick direction changes, and precise front-end handling. It weighs 199.5 kilograms with 5 liters of fuel, the standard weight measured by Red, with a rather generous suspension travel of 180 millimeters, more than what, on paper, should be the most enduro-oriented Multistrada. And in terms of chassis geometry, it goes a bit against the trend compared to the other two in this trio, with a fairly compact wheelbase of 1,502 millimeters and more relaxed front-end geometry to compensate for the agility of the 17-inch wheel. We have 111.5 millimeters of trail and a steering head angle of 25.8 degrees. In general, this is the one that encourages you to ride more aggressively, the one made for those who see the road as a bit of a racetrack. Although, it must be said, to represent a front wheel category, perhaps it's not the most suitable, because it's also the one where the front wheel has the least contact with the ground.
"17 inches is the size that has historically taken us 100% onto the road and allowed us to ride in a very assertive way. After riding the SMT, in my opinion, the focus even shifts to pure fun. Extremely quick entering corners, extremely quick in changing direction, with the ability to attack even the tightest hairpins at an incredible speed. It's a bike, specifically with slightly long travel suspension like the SMT, that you need to get to know step by step, especially when coming down from a 19-inch or even more so from a 21-inch, because the way it's ridden changes radically. It's beautiful and it really makes you feel cool. You can play a lot with the throttle and enjoy even the twistiest roads with very little effort. On the other hand, the 17-inch size is something you need to get familiar with, because sometimes the entry speed is so fast that it can put less experienced riders in difficulty. Moreover, in this case, you're supported by a wide handlebar that further accentuates the speed at which you enter corners. I like the 17-inch, I really like how it grips the asphalt and how quickly it lets you enjoy every single stretch of road in front of you. However, I repeat, in my opinion, it's actually a bit too quick, and it loses a bit of that satisfying feeling you get from the stability of the 19-inch or even the great stability in cornering that the 21-inch offers. I'm a bit undecided about giving a final judgment, so I'll wait to analyze it in my final comments.
The Ducati Multistrada V2 S represents the perfect balance point. At the front, there's a 19-inch wheel, a size that tries to bridge the gap between two worlds, less extreme than the 17 but much more stable than the 21. It's the choice for those who want versatility without giving up riding pleasure, and it's also my favorite. With 211 kilograms measured on our scale with 5 liters of fuel and 170 millimeters suspension travel, this Ducati builds its character precisely on balance, stability, smoothness, and a consistently clear reading of the road surface. A few numbers for her: a long wheelbase of 1,572 millimeters, a steep steering head angle of 24.3 degrees, and a trail of 105.5 millimeters. It's the philosophy of doing everything well, in fact very well, but without going to extremes in either direction.
And this is the first word that comes to mind when I have to describe the front end, and in general, the chassis of the Multistrada V2, because the feeling is really that Ducati managed to find the perfect balance point between the agility of a crossover with a 17-inch wheel and the progressiveness of one with a 21-inch wheel, a more off-road oriented 21-inch wheel. And it's not just a matter of the front wheel. It's clearly also due to how the bike sits on the road, to the fact that you can really feel everything the front end is doing. And this, combined with the typical progressiveness of a 19-inch wheel, I have to say that it inspires a lot of confidence in whatever you're doing at practically any pace, whether you're leaning the bike into tight hairpins at low speed, which are tighter and therefore will require less centrifugal force to hold, or when you're going faster and start riding in a sportier way. Clearly the 19-inch wheel holds up. As previously mentioned, its relatively gradual response certainly isn't the quickest possible solution for rapidly changing direction or for smoothly entering into a sharp turn. However, it gives back a lot of confidence, especially in those less than ideal conditions of asphalt and, in general, road surface, like in a couple of sections. Here, going up the Pendis road that we took today, where there are some dips, changes in gradient, and maybe a few longitudinal bumps on the road. The 19-inch wheel, clearly compared to the 17, it has to be admitted. It has an edge when it comes to masking the imperfections of the asphalt. And I have to say that in general, as I often mention, it has happened to me several times. It's actually what I said about the bigger sister, the V4, I can confirm for this V2 as well. This 19-inch wheel, while maintaining the positive qualities that fans of the 19 appreciate, manages to get closer to the 17, to the riding feel of the 17, more than you would expect, without really sacrificing much in terms of support. Especially when you're at the apex of the corner. And so, as you increase the lean angle, you're looking for grip, for contact with the ground, for confidence. The combination of tire sizes manages to provide this sense of presence at both ends of the bike, which even in this situation offers a great deal of confidence. In general, I have to say that I did not expect anything different, so I cannot say that the Multistrada V2 surprised me, but it did confirm its quality. It's the Ducati chassis, and in my opinion, the great attention to detail in the work that's been done to make the chassis of this crossover so well balanced between comfort, smoothness of ride, and sportiness.
The Triumph Tiger 900 Rally Pro plays a different game. Up front, there's a 21-inch wheel, and it completely changes the way you ride on the road. Here, the focus is clearly not on attacking the corners, but on the ability to float over imperfections, to read the terrain even before the asphalt. With 221.4 kilograms and suspension travel of 240 millimeters at the front and 230 millimeters at the rear, it is the tallest, the one with the greatest travel, the most off-road in its DNA. A few numbers to understand the vital measurements, because every wheel solution obviously affects all the chassis choices. In this case, we find a wheelbase of 1,551 millimeters, a steering head angle of 24.4 degrees, and a very open trail of 116.8 millimeters. On asphalt, this means a rounder, less immediate turn-in, but with stability that comes from its ability to absorb everything. It's a different language, it needs to be understood, but once you get it, you realize that you can go fast with it too.
lovers of the 21-inch rejoice, because the new 21-inch tires are truly excellent. So in our comparison, obviously the Triumph is, on paper, at a disadvantage. I have to say that in the end, I found a bike that is actually very well balanced, so kudos to Marco for bringing this bike as a worthy representative of the 17/21 combination. So what actually happens? That coming out from a standstill, it's a very fast bike, especially when you're going at low speeds where the inertia of the wheels is less noticeable. So it's very quick off the line, but in the second part of the turn, you really have to guide it a lot. The more you increase your speed, the more the inertia increases, and the more the Triumph requires you to work it in order to change direction and to finish the turn. But all of this happens with, in my opinion, an excellent balance between the front and rear. You never lose support because while it's true that the tire is narrower, it's also larger in diameter, so the contact patch, the area touching the ground, is still there, and it manages to go reasonably fast. I didn't notice any grip issues with the rear, either going uphill or downhill, even though it's a 150, so it's the narrowest of all. So if I had to sum it up, I'd say narrow section, so acceleration from zero is affected, both because the front tire is a narrow 90/90 and the rear is a 150/70. Then there's more work to do in the second part of the corner, also considering that this bike is still the heaviest of the three and that it has significant suspension travel, since we're talking about 240. You can stiffen it up and make it even more effective. What I liked is that the lateral grip of the 21-inch front never put me in trouble, so it's a tire that, even when you're almost scraping the foot pegs on the ground, still manages to give you satisfaction. So who comes first on the mountain pass? In my opinion, it always depends on who's riding the bikes, not the bikes themselves, because in the end, on the road, the limit is still the road.
So, here we are, back in our studio once again. I promised you at the very beginning of this segment that we might even take a vote, and in fact that is exactly what we did. Trying our best to make our overall driving impressions feel a bit more objective and fair for everyone. In this table, you will find values such as corner entry speed, speed in direction changes, tight corners, fast corners, straight line stability, driving feel, cornering stability, lateral grip, and trail braking. What does that mean? All those measurements that are taken by the testers who ultimately develop the tires, all of this is divided by 17-inch wheels, 19-inch wheels, and 21-inch wheels. As you can see from the table, most of the green boxes are for the 17-inch wheel, especially when we talk about agility and speed in changing direction. But very close behind are the scores for the 19-inch wheel, which also earns some green boxes, for example in fast mixed sections, in riding feel, and, why not, in cornering stability as well. There are a bit fewer green boxes for the 21-inch wheel, which does have many positive characteristics such as stability, but obviously when it comes to riding in twisty sections it loses some points in terms of support, lateral grip, and for some of us even a bit in terms of riding feel. To sum up, 770 points for the 17-inch wheel, 778 points for the 19-inch wheel, and 701 points for the 21-inch wheel. These are very high scores, which confirms that new modern tires are truly super high performing no matter which size we use. But above all, it confirms that the 19-inch wheel for our test and with the motorcycles we considered in this comparison turned out to be the best choice. That's because you lose almost nothing in terms of execution speed, but you gain a lot of stability in corners and a great deal of safety when riding. So you give up a little something, but perhaps what you gain is greater than what you lose. Of course, we could discuss this at length. In fact, let us know in the comments which 3 motorcycles you would choose for a comparison like this. 17, 19 or 21. And who knows, maybe in the future we'll actually do it. In this case, with the KTM SMT, Ducati Multistrada V2 S and Triumph Tiger 900 Rally Pro, this was the result. No one is saying that changing the motorcycle models couldn't also change the outcome. But I can tell you that, in theory, what we found in this comparison is more or less what you get even when you switch up the motorcycle models. Here, the winner was the wheel, the diameter of the wheel. We kept the 17-inch rear wheel on all of them, specifically so as not to skew our test too much, and in the end, this was the result. If you liked it, let us know in the comments. If you didn't like it, let us know in the comments anyway. If you have other bikes to suggest or other comparisons like this, tell us in the comments as well. We'll see you in the next video here on Red Motorbike.